Hello students, my name is Iqbal Singh and I teach Political Science and International Relations at Vajiram and Ravi. I particularly teach PSIR Paper-II in the institute, and in this particular video, I'm going to briefly discuss with you concept of nuclear deterrence. Generally, we have noticed that students, they are very curious about nuclear weapons and nuclear warfare. Nuclear warfare cannot be understood without understanding the concept, the very important concept of nuclear deterrence. Therefore, in this particular brief video, I would like to briefly discuss with you what is the concept of nuclear deterrence, which is also one of the most important topics when we talk about the PSIR Paper-II syllabus. Students, before I start the discussion on the topic of nuclear deterrence, I would also like to tell you that here in our institute, during our classes, while teaching political science and international relations, we try and make it as easy as possible for our students to excel in this exam. We provide them printed notes, the notes which have been prepared from a very wide list of readings as per the requirements of the UPSC syllabus. And these printed notes, this printed material, which is a one-stop solution for the students, is provided to our students in the classes in the manner of handouts and also in the manner of booklets, so that this can help them prepare for the exam in the best possible manner. So such similar notes are given to our students in our classes, and I will in fact use glimpses of those notes only to help you understand the concept of nuclear deterrence. So when we talk about the concept of nuclear deterrence, what is nuclear deterrence? Before we discuss nuclear deterrence, we must discuss what is a nuclear war. If there are two countries which are having nuclear weapons and they fight a war with each other, if they end up fighting a war with each other, we would describe it a nuclear war. You must understand here that both the sides must have the nuclear weapons in order to have a nuclear war with each other. If there are two countries in which one side has the nuclear weapon and the other doesn't, and they fight a war, we will not describe it as a nuclear war. One can say that that is a war between a superior country and an inferior country. However, if both sides have nuclear weapons and if they fight a war and they use nuclear weapons against each other, we will describe it as a nuclear war. Fortunately, I must tell you that a human race, human species has not seen a nuclear war. Nuclear war has never happened in the world. Whereas you know very well that there are many countries in the world which have acquired nuclear weapons. In fact, right now, there are around 9 countries which have nuclear weapon capabilities, which includes countries like US, UK, France, Russia, China, also India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel. So these 9 countries have nuclear weapon capabilities as far as the nuclear weapons are concerned. But we have never seen nuclear war happening in the world. So why nuclear war has never happened? What is the reason that nuclear war has never happened? The reason for that is the concept of nuclear deterrence. The concept of nuclear deterrence is the reason for nuclear war not happening. That is why it's so important to understand nuclear deterrence. Now, what is the concept of nuclear deterrence? You must understand that if a nuclear war happens, the cost of fighting the war, which will be much more than the benefit. This means that in a nuclear war, what will happen? All participants will lose the war and there will be no winners. Basically, in nuclear war, what happens? Both sides or all participants, they will use nuclear weapons against each other and they will end up destroying each other. This is described as mutually assured destruction, which is also beautifully abbreviated as MAD doctrine. So, nuclear warfare would lead to mutually assured destruction, and therefore there would be no winners and all participants are bound to suffer and lose the war. In fact, the one who fires first is bound to die second. So therefore, in a nuclear warfare, there is no such technology in the world which have been invented yet which can help us guarantee or which can guarantee us victory in nuclear warfare. So in a nuclear war, what happens? The cost of fighting the war is much more than the benefit. Therefore, the presence of nuclear weapons frightens countries to not fight a war with each other. In fact, the term deter is a Latin term which means to frighten. So presence of nuclear weapons frightens countries to not fight a nuclear war with each other. And this is called the concept of nuclear deterrence. As far as concept of nuclear deterrence is concerned, in international politics, we consider nuclear deterrence as an alternative to the concept of a balance of power. Both these are realist concepts. The realist theory in international politics have suggested balance of power also and nuclear deterrence also. And there are scholars and experts who say that balance of power now has been replaced by nuclear deterrence. If you have nuclear deterrence, then that's the guarantee to your national security, and therefore there's no need to pursue BOP. So nuclear deterrence is also considered as an alternative to balance of power. Which are the most important scholars when it comes to nuclear deterrence in international politics? As mentioned in our notes given to our students, we provide this material, such material to our students, which is very rich, which has all the best possible content which is required to ace the exam, as I mentioned to you earlier. So which are the scholars which have been most prominent or which have written on nuclear deterrence or has elaborated the concept of nuclear deterrence in international politics? Scholars like John Mearsheimer, who has advocated the spread of nuclear weapons. In fact, John Mearsheimer says that nuclear weapons should proliferate, that means proliferation of nuclear weapons should happen, but it should be only given to mature democracies, not to military ruled states or second generation nuclear weapon states, because as far as nuclear deterrence is concerned, nuclear deterrence concept is based on an assumption. What is that assumption? The assumption is that the states would always act rationally. States are rational actors. Nations are rational actors. This is the assumption which has been made in the concept of nuclear deterrence. According to the concept of nuclear deterrence, the states are rational, therefore they will calculate and then only take action. They will calculate the benefit and the losses and then they will take action. I hope you know what is rationality. Rational decisions are those decisions which are based on logical reasoning, where there's logic and reasoning behind taking your decision. So states will reason out that there is no use fighting a nuclear war, because in a case of nuclear war, there will be mutually assured destruction and all participants will lose. Therefore, the cost of fighting the war is much more than the benefit. Therefore, nations are rational actors, states are rational actors. This is one of the assumptions which are made in the concept of nuclear deterrence. However, John Mearsheimer, he says that military ruled states, undemocratic countries or second generation nuclear weapons states may not act rationally, especially military ruled states which may be tempted to use the nuclear weapon to achieve immediate victory in the battlefield. Therefore, the assumption of rationality may not hold true in case of military ruled states or undemocratic states. Therefore, John Mearsheimer is a scholar and a very renowned IR scholar, a neo-realist scholar who has suggested that nuclear weapons should be only proliferated or should only be acquired by democratic states. He says proliferation of nuclear weapons should only be restricted to first generation nuclear weapon states or mature democracies. Then only the concept of nuclear deterrence would be applicable. Otherwise, if nuclear weapons, they land up in the hands of second generation nuclear states or undemocratic countries or dictatorships or military ruled states, there's a possibility that the concept may fail. So that's the viewpoint of John Mearsheimer. Similarly, there are other scholars also who has given their viewpoints on the concept of nuclear deterrence. There is Thomas Schelling, there's Herman Kahn, there's Bernard Brody. These are prominent scholars who have written on the concept of nuclear deterrence, and often we have to and we must quote them in our answers as far as the exam is concerned. Also, in order to exercise the nuclear deterrence strategy, there are three very important C's which must be followed. Which are these three important C's? First is communication, then capability, and then credibility. Now, what is communication? In order for this concept to work, if you want to exercise nuclear deterrence, then the deterring actor must communicate to the challenger that what actions are unacceptable and what punishment will ensue if it misbehaves. These are also known as red lines. A country which has nuclear weapons, it should clearly communicate to other countries or its adversaries that these are my red lines or this is my Lakshman Rekha. If you cross these red lines, then I will be forced to use my nuclear weapon. This communication should be very clear. Then only the concept of nuclear deterrence or nuclear deterrence strategy can be exercised. Because obviously, you can't use your nuclear weapons at a drop of a hat. If there is some cross-border firing for a few minutes, this cannot be a reason to use your nuclear weapons, because then in that case, the whole concept loses its validity and its use. So therefore, nuclear deterrence strategy, in order to exercise it successfully, the communication should be very clear in the form of red lines. You should communicate to your adversary that if these red lines, if this Lakshman Rekha is crossed, then I will be forced to use my nuclear weapons, and I will use my nuclear weapons. For example, a country may say that if your fighter aircrafts or if your armed forces enter my territory after a particular point of time, if this much distance is crossed, I will be forced to use my nuclear weapons. So this can be an example of red lines. Second is capability. A deterring actor must demonstrate that it has the capability to back up its threats. It is very important to also prove it to the world that you have the nuclear capability. It's something very different if you say that I have the weapon and I will use the weapon if my national security is threatened. But you will also have to convince the world that you have that capability and you have that weapon and you can use that in whatever manner you want to use it. So that capability should also be demonstrated. That is why you must have seen that all nuclear weapon countries, they have tested nuclear weapons and they have proven it to the world that we have tested our nuclear weapons successfully, and therefore they have proven their capability, and that helps them exercise a nuclear deterrence strategy. Nuclear weapons capability, even delivery mechanisms. In order to deliver a nuclear weapon, you need intercontinental ballistic missiles. Those ICBM technology also you will have to demonstrate your capability in order to exercise a nuclear deterrence strategy. Thirdly, there is the third C is the C of credibility. Now it is also very important that your threats and commitments must be credible. Whatever threats you are giving to your adversaries, that if my national security is threatened, then I am bound to use my nuclear weapons, these threats should be credible threats. You should be able to convince others that the threatened punishment, that nuclear weapons will be launched if my red lines are crossed or my red lines are violated. So credibility is also very important. For example, let's take the example of India. You must be very curious about India because India has nuclear weapons. Now there's something called first strike capability and there's something called second strike capability. Now what happens in nuclear warfare, if two countries have nuclear weapons, both obviously have developed the first strike capability. That means that they can use nuclear weapons. And with the help of the delivery mechanism, with the help of the intercontinental ballistic missiles, they can use nuclear weapons and they have the first strike capability. They can do the first nuclear strike. But when there are multiple nuclear powers, then it becomes very important that you should also have second strike capability. Second strike capability means that if in a case a country is attacked by, there's a nuclear attack on a country, in that case, that country must have second strike capability, that even after the nuclear attack, they must have the capability to launch a retaliatory strike or second strike. So if you have the second strike capability in today's world where there are multiple nuclear powers, you must have the second strike capability to ensure or to have credible nuclear deterrence. Your nuclear deterrence strategy would be seen as credible strategy only if you have second strike capability. And that's exactly what India has developed. India has developed a second strike capability by forming nuclear triad. Now you must be wondering, what is nuclear triad? Nuclear triad is the capability to launch nuclear missiles from all three sources, from land, from air, and also underwater with the help of nuclear submarines, nuclear ballistic submarines. So this capability has been acquired by India. So India has nuclear triad. India can launch nuclear missiles from land, from air, and also from underwater. Therefore, India has second strike capability. If two countries have second strike capability, then only this mutually assured destruction MAD doctrine is possible. Okay, that is something which you have to understand. So in order to achieve credibility as far as nuclear deterrence is concerned, second strike capability is required. So these are three very important C's: communication, capability, and credibility. If you are able to exercise all these three, then only you can successfully exercise the nuclear deterrence strategy. So this is just a brief discussion on what the concept of nuclear deterrence is. However, obviously, when you come to our classrooms, we will have much more elaborate discussion. For example, we must also discuss the strategy of nuclear deterrence developed during the Cold War period between the two Cold War rivals, USA and USSR. We must also discuss the various types of nuclear weapons, strategical nuclear weapons and tactical nuclear weapons. We must also discuss what is the present relevance of nuclear deterrence in today's world, where we have new threats like terrorism, and also there is a possibility of nuclear terrorism emerging in the future. And in that context, what is the relevance of nuclear deterrence today? That also becomes a very important topic. Obviously, we will have all these discussions when you join me in the classroom. I hope you have benefited to some extent from this particular video to understand the concept of nuclear deterrence. Just as a glimpse, we wanted you to know that this is how we deal with these topics in our classrooms, and these are the kind of notes and material which we share with our students, which is the single stop solution for students to prepare for the exam and in the best possible manner to ace the exam. I hope the video has been beneficial for you. See you all in the classroom. Thank you, students. Thank you so much.